Hey, everybody, welcome in. It's Just Dubs for KNBR, the sports leader. It's John Dickinson and Greg Silver. We're with you as we are each and every Saturday morning, 10 a.m. until noon. And another one of these, YouTube and Twitch. Yeah, you've got your coffee. I've got my coffee. I'm going to try to just put it into the shot there without dropping it. Anytime I try to go off script like that, I'm worried about dropping it all over the equipment, which would be a bad start to the morning here as we get Just Dubs off and running. Appreciate everybody as people begin to file in on YouTube and Twitch and on the KNBR Twitter stream as well, the live stream there. It is a busy day for us as we have Just Dubs here for the next couple of hours. And then the Warriors take on the San Antonio Spurs tonight in San Francisco, the first of what's going to be two games against the Spurs back-to-back. Chase Center tonight, in San Antonio on Monday at the beginning of a three-game trip for the Warriors. And let's just start with the big news, because we didn't know on Thursday night when we wrapped up Dubs OT, everybody kind of holding their breath as far as, yes, difficult loss. Warriors did not play a winning game for the most part against the Bulls, but it looked like they were going to have an opportunity to steal that game with about 4 minutes left. They had the 3-point lead. Steph Curry goes out, ankle tweak. He tried to really walk it off to attempt to stay in the game, but it was just apparent real quickly from being in the building that Steph wasn't going to be able to do it. And so he not only headed to the bench, but he headed to the locker room. The Warriors end up losing the game. Draymond Green fouled out as well. And then you're starting to think, okay, 20 games to go. How many of these games is Stephen Curry going to miss? And can the Warriors basically survive it to be anything other than the 10 seed in the Western Conference? And there was good news yesterday on the Steph Curry front, and we will get more of an update even coming later today, possibly during the show. Although I do think with the things that were reported on yesterday in the afternoon, probably going to be right before Steve Kerr's pregame press conference, if I had to guess, around 3:30 or 3:45, that the official note from the Warriors will come as far as Curry's injury status. But Woj of ESPN initially, Greg, with the right ankle report that it returned clean, and then a clearer timeline would come over the next couple of days. But then further reporting from Shams and Anthony Slater and even Monty Poole of NBC Sports Bay Area indicate that there's not only optimism that it's a game or a few games. I know Monty had put the similar to Devin Booker 7 to 10 days report on it. All in all, if it's 7 to 10 days, and I think I might have said specifically on Thursday night, the Warriors could probably survive 7 to 10 days, but not much more. If they want to be able to get out of the 10 or even out of the 9-10 matchup. It looks like it's anywhere between tonight, which we should point out, he has already been ruled out for tonight. The injury report for tonight came out last night around 5:30. Trace Jackson-Davis also questionable for the game tonight, so we'll just kind of throw that in. But all in all, with 20 games to go, and the Lakers got another win last night, they matched the Warriors' victory over the Bucks with a victory over the Bucks themselves. So you look at this thing from the Warriors' standpoint. We'll get into the Western Conference standings. The Warriors are back in 10th, basically, because the Lakers are now 35-30. The Warriors are 33-29, and it's more of a day-to-day to a week thing for Steph, which is huge. I mean, and you're playing San Antonio a couple of times. Not that that's going to be a picnic, but they do come in with the worst record in the Western Conference.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the first thing about Steph Curry's injury that we can point out from our perspective and the theme of our shows since the All-Star break is, I would say, the no excuses label continues, right? Like, you can survive a few games without Steph Curry. He's going to come back, hopefully, in time for that Lakers game next week, because that's going to be a big one. Might have to survive the Dallas game without him, but you get 2 San Antonio games tonight without Wemby, and then he might come back for the Monday one. I know that that's his goal to return, but I think the no excuses thing still continues. And what you saw on Thursday was how thin the margin of error was, because the Warriors are capable of blowing out a Milwaukee team on their home floor. And, I think we had similar feelings on Milwaukee without Middleton, that not quite the caliber of a Boston, but certainly one of the better teams in the NBA. And then you juxtapose that with also being on their home floor against Chicago on Thursday, played a much worse game. The margin for error gets slim. And even on the Curry injury itself, they had to foul because he couldn't play defense. And that ends up mattering when it ends up being a 1 point or 1 to 3 point game, one possession in the final stages of all of it. So razor thin margin for error. But the good news is I think they can survive this in the short term, and therefore the no excuses theme lives on.
Yeah, and I think, if the Warriors were playing really anybody other than San Antonio, and look, San Antonio darn near beat Sacramento without Wembanyama Thursday night in Sacramento. Those have been the games typically for the Kings that they don't play as well in. Anytime there's a lesser team basically in their building with anybody out, like they almost lose like every single time. So they did survive though. But I mean, I do think San Antonio is a team that the Warriors have their best chance of beating without Steph Curry if they have to beat him a couple of times. I mean, plenty of teams have beaten San Antonio this year when you look at their overall record. And so in some ways, and I know our buddy Douglas Mikes early to chime in here on the YouTube chat with the comment, great news about Steph, get some rest, 2 games in a row that the Warriors should win regardless. I'm going to stop just short of should win, because this team has not won a single game that Stephen Curry has not played this year. It's only been 3. But the Warriors are 0-3 in those games. I know one of them, there were multiple veteran players who also ended up with the night off. But the Warriors, yes, I think they've got as good a chance as possible to win these next 2. I think this team could lose to any team in the league without Steph. So I agree with you. No excuses. I agree with you. You need to go win these. If you can win these next 2 and somehow he comes back for the Dallas game, that might be a little bit optimistic. But I do think it winds up being, if you can get the wins, a decent scenario, because it does get Steph some rest, and it takes a little bit of the pressure off of having to say, all right, Steph, we're going to rest you. Because the Warriors were not going to do any kind of planned rest for Steph. Maybe one game between now and the end of the regular season when you look at the glut on that Eastern trip potentially that's coming up. And then they come back for one, and then they go back to Texas for a couple of more games due to the rescheduling there in the early part of April. But I think when you look at it, they weren't going to plan to give him a night off. And now that you know that it's only going to be maybe 2 to 4 games that he's going to miss, then I think you're a little bit more comfortable with looking at it as, all right, it does get him a rest. Maybe he'll be a little bit fresher. But that's all contingent on the Warriors winning these next 2. Because if they could win the next 2, get to +6, I think that's also why their inability to finish the game on Thursday when it was right there. I found myself in the moment thinking, if they're going to be without Steph for a couple of weeks, at that point was kind of where my mind was going, then they only have to withstand 4 minutes right now to earn another win, which would, give them another game of separation to 500. And, it takes 2 games basically to wipe out the one game at that point. So I think when you start to get into that, it can be a benefit, but it's only a benefit if the Warriors are able to go out and handle business against the Spurs. Yeah,
and it could have been a lot worse when you look at where things could head with Steph Curry. And you knew it was going to be missing some time. The fact that he couldn't finish those 4 games and that ankle was only going to swell up a little bit, you just didn't know if it was going to be a 7 to 10 day prognosis like it's seeming to be, or if we were talking a month, in which case they're even going to make the play-in. But you're right that they're not going to plan any rest for him unless there's a scenario at the very end of the regular season where it's like, hey, the Warriors are locked into the 9 seed, or they're locked into the 8 and they're going to have to go on the road to wherever, which Yeah, that was our fun conversation of testing some audio and then just talking about everything Warriors. We had like pre-just dubs that was about half the length of what this show will be, which was great.
Well, and yeah, and I'm looking at just real quick. I mean, they play the Spurs tonight. Obviously, he's not going to play. Already been ruled out for that one. He's probably not playing Monday. Although again, we'll get more clarity on that at some point between now and game time tonight, which is 5:30 over at Chase Center. I do think it's optimistic that he plays in Dallas on Wednesday, this coming Wednesday, which is a huge game. The games against Dallas and the Lakers are the most important games that the Warriors have left. And there's 3 against Dallas and 2 against the Lakers. And you look at 4 of those 5 basically are on the road, which may not be a bad thing for the Warriors because they've played better basketball on the road, but they still have 2 trips to Dallas next Wednesday and then April 5th. And they play Dallas on April 2nd at Chase. And then both games against the Lakers next Saturday and the one in April, I think it's April 9th, the Warriors are on the road. So those are the most important games that the Warriors have left to this point. But just kind of running through it, it is probably optimistic that he plays the first Dallas game next Wednesday. I think the Laker game is, that's the first one in line with the 7 to 10 day mark, right? If you go back through Thursday night, 7 days from Thursday night would put him out for the Dallas game, but maybe give him an opportunity to play against the Lakers. And then they're home. So it's, Knicks, Grizzlies, Pacers that following week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday at home, they go on the road. And, he's going to play at Minnesota, probably going to play at Miami. If there was a game where maybe they would look to get him a game off, maybe it's at Orlando on Wednesday, the 27th, but that's a game against an Orlando team to where if you don't have Steph Curry, you probably are punting on that game on that night. Steph's gonna want to play in Charlotte for obvious reasons on the 29th, and then there's the game on the following Sunday against San Antonio. The Warriors, for all the Dallases and Lakers, the Warriors do still have 3 games against San Antonio between now and the end of the season. So that gets them an opportunity to stack some wins. But to the point on like resting Steph and all that, the next back-to-back is Houston and Dallas. And obviously you need him against Dallas. They have, Portland and the Pelicans. You're going to need them because that's the final 3-4 games of the season. So there really is no natural place to get Steph Curry any kind of planned rest. This injury can have the opportunity to maybe freshen him up a little bit, assuming that it's not too serious, and it looks like it's not.
Yeah, and while everyone's filing in, because numbers are looking great for 10:15 in the morning, I also want to invite you all, if you have any questions that you want to run by us that we can address throughout the show, pop them in the YouTube chat, the Twitch chat, the X chat. Please, we love engaging with all you. Good to see you, CA, this morning. Good to see you, Douglas Mikes. We kicked off the show with your comment. And while we're kind of letting people filter in some comments, I guess I want to go to the rotation talk with you, JD, which is Steve Kerr was on our airwaves yesterday with Tolbert and Copes, as he does every week. And I was very, very interested in what they're going to do with this second unit, because if they don't start Chris Paul and they keep this bench unit together that has been successful with CP3 and Clay as your bench backcourt, then what are you doing in the starting lineup? Like, do you put Podziemski in a starting point guard role and then maybe go Podziemski, Moody, Wiggins, Kuminga, Draymond, and then keep CP3 off the bench and just play him more minutes? Or do you just do the natural plug-in of play Chris Paul in the starting lineup?
I've got a not so wild, not so hot take. I'm going to tell you what I want to do. I'm just going to. I was saving this maybe for a tease if we were going to take a little short break and come back, but it doesn't matter. We're just on YouTube and Twitch and the Twitter live stream for KNBR this morning. I would start Chris Paul and Klay Thompson, and that may seem like you're moving too many parts around, but with Steph out, here are the two things you need with Steph out. You need a shooting threat and you need a point guard. So you aren't getting that if you move Podziemski to the one. Like, to me, like I think starting Chris Paul and Podziemski. So you just plug first option, just plug Chris Paul in for Curry, right? Curry's out. I think Chris Paul, Podziemski, that's too small. Too small to be a start for the starting backcourt. Now, can you get away with it against San Antonio? See, that's the other part of it. Like, you can kind of get away with whatever you want to do in a sense against San Antonio, right? You've got more margin to play. You'd think. But what I would do, opponent be damned, is you have to have Chris Paul out there quarterback in the thing. An opportunity for him to step in, and Chris Paul's going to get 30 minutes now. Like, that's, for as long as Steph is out, Chris Paul's going to get 30 minutes. And I think this is also, not to get off on a Chris Paul tangent, but I think this is, situations like this are in part why Chris Paul was brought in. The Steph Curry's going to miss some time at different points of the season, but I think situations like this, Greg, are also why you don't want to overdo it with Chris Paul's minutes when you have everybody, because there are going to be times where you're going to need to lean on him for a little bit more. And I think this is one of those times. So I would put Chris Paul in the starting lineup because you need him as the point guard to get everything organized and run the show. I would also put Klay Thompson back into the starting lineup because you need him as a shooting threat and as a scoring threat. And then what I would do is move Podziemski to the backup point guard at that point. So I would have, and look, you're going to have Podziemski and Chris Paul probably playing a little bit together anyway, but I would rather have them do it back into the first quarter for a couple of minutes. And then, you basically that's where you can now get Moody in. I think, this does open up an opportunity for Lester Quinones to play more just because of his ability to pressure the ball. So,
and shoot,
and shoot a little bit. So I think, I would go with Klay back in the starting lineup, but I'm not, if there's a case to be made, keep Klay coming off the bench. He's accepting that role and he's played well in it. But I think the Chris Paul, Klay, Wiggins, Kuminga, Draymond Green starting lineup that's the way that I would go here and just see how that goes. And again, I know you're basically changing three things, right? And you never want to change three things because of one move, but I feel like that's the best.
But it's the nucleus of the team. It's one big move.
Yeah, it's the best way to get the most out of everybody. Like I like that more than make Podziemski make Podziemski the point, and then what? Like, you're not going to make Podziemski the point and then start Moody like that just to keep Klay and Chris Paul coming off the bench. No, Chris Paul and Klay are still among the Warriors' most important 7 or 8 players. So bump them up when your number one guy is out. So that was just how I thought about it. I don't think it's because of the opponent. I don't think it's a hard and fast, you have to do it one way or the other. I do think there's some wiggle room there, but I would go with CP I think he will go with CP. Like, that part's a no-brainer. It's just a matter of, is it going to be CP and Podziemski, or is it going to be CP and Klay, or is it going to be maybe CP and Moody, and then Podziemski goes to the bench? Like, I don't really see that. But I think those are all of the different options, I think, in play here. If there's one I'm missing, let me know. Yeah.
No, I was going to say, I want to ask you a follow-up, because I like playing with this idea. I think that's a really intriguing start to our show. And if that's the case, you put Klay and CP back in the starting backcourt, Podziemski moves into the second unit. Are you thinking in that case maybe Draymond Green a little bit more time in the second unit too, so that it's not all the setting and running the offense responsibilities on Podziemski, and you have a little bit more support in terms of just running the offense, dishing out passes, high IQ, when he's not throwing errant passes in early third quarters and whatnot. Just joking with Draymond, but
No, I think you could see that. I think, Steve Kerr has in the last couple of games, he's put Draymond out there at the beginning of the fourth quarter. He hasn't been out there at the beginning of the second quarter. It's been CP, Pajemski, Moody, Kuminga, and Trace Jackson Davis is the way he's played the last two second quarters. And a lot of the times the fourth quarter will match the second quarter, at least who's out there at the beginning. But, when you make a change, like sometimes, game specific, if you have a group or a portion of a group that maybe you don't trust to be out there at the beginning of the fourth quarter, you make a little bit of an adjustment there. And I think in this case, it hasn't been so much that you don't trust. It's just been that because he's gone away from Looney and Saric, he's gone to Trace Jackson Davis more quickly as the first big off the bench. And I think that means that, you don't want to play Trace Jackson Davis more than maybe 6-7 minutes in a row there, because you potentially are going to close with him. So what he's done is he's basically had Draymond sub for him at the top of the fourth quarter these last couple of games. So you have Draymond out there, and he's been out there even with Chris Paul, and then Trace Jackson Davis will come in and get another little stint with him, with Draymond, basically, for a couple of minutes before Kuminga and everybody else ends up coming back in the game. So he's done it in the fourth quarters. Will he do it in the second quarters? I'm not sure, but I do think these two games against San Antonio are two games where I don't want to say Steve Kerr can play with it, but he can play with it, because there is a little bit more of a margin for error against San Antonio, to where, all right, we want to go this. You can basically kind of use those two games to work your way into how you maybe want to handle the Dallas and Lakers games, should you have to play those two games without Steph.
Yeah, I mean, he could play with it relative to what you would have expected if Steph Curry were to miss any time at all, I think is a better way to put it. Tim Kawakami, I think, was the one that pointed out that Draymond has basically been sitting for a full quarter, like mid-first to mid-second, and that's how they're able to kind of have a little more sustainable approach with him and get him more second-half minutes if the game ends up being close. Obviously, when you lose the centerpiece of your team, everyone's going to have to play a little bit more, chip in a little bit in different ways. I want to get to one of our questions, because I know I prompted it, and I think it would be foolish of me to just ignore it.
Sure.
Our guy CA wants to talk about GP2, especially in regard to the Bulls game. He said, JD, could you please help me out? Isn't GP2 on the team for on-ball defense? Why would Kerr only play him 11 minutes when we had no answer for DeMar DeRozan last game?
Yeah, DeRozan, typically GP2 he's better on littler players. He's better on the point guards, or a little bit smaller players than a guy like DeRozan. I think it also, first and foremost, they want to play. They just don't want to play him, GP2, a lot of minutes, like, period. And I don't think he had a great first half in the game on Thursday night. I'm trying to get my nights right. The game against the Bulls, they're all kind of running together. And I think it becomes a numbers game in terms of who's going to be out there on the floor. I thought it was interesting, the Wiggins comments too, as far as, like, he wasn't on a minutes restriction, but clearly they're trying to ease him back in. And that's led to, I think, a little bit of a more uneven rotation. I thought it was really prevalent in the Chicago game. Like, it just seemed like, all right, this is a new rotation, and Wiggins is not, he's playing, but he's not. It's the whole thing that we've seen, I think, with Moody and Kuminga at times. We've seen with Wiggins these first two, where it's like they're not playing enough to be effective. And if they're not effective in short minutes, like, would you be better with them playing at all? And it's like, so until Wiggins can get to the point where they're comfortable playing him 25 to 30 minutes, then he's been less effective. As far as GP2, I just think they are absolutely, paranoid's probably not the right word, but they just don't want to play him more than 15 to 20 minutes a game, because they're worried about injury. And I think they want to make sure that they have him as somebody that they can go to in a play-in tournament game or in a playoff series and have him fresh and available to play. The other thing becomes, and this is where you look at a game like the game against Chicago a couple of nights ago, if you're going to have Steph out there, and I know Steph got hurt, but let's just play it out as far as, all right, if you're going to have Steph out there, you're going to have Clay out there, you're going to have Draymond out there, you're going to have Kuminga out there. So yeah, I guess you could put GP2 out there basically as the fifth. I'm trying to look at who else was having a good game, but I don't think he played well in the game Thursday, and I think that sort of took him out of the equation as far as being in that finishing group. But there's no doubt. I mean, to me, that's ideally where you need Wiggins. Like that. Like to me, you needed Wiggins, but then Wiggins, if he's going to be out there on the floor, then it becomes who's going to guard Kobe White, and how do you? So they have. I think at times, the teams that have the DeRozan type and the quick point guard type, those teams are the ones that I think really make the Warriors vulnerable, because then you're forcing a better defender on the guard, and then that leaves Kuminga a little bit more vulnerable. And Kuminga, who's, I think really upped his defensive game, and I don't want to take anything away from Kuminga, but, DeRozan, a veteran who can draw fouls and play methodically, who's, got the same level of size and great skill. Like, it's just a bad matchup for Kuminga, and he destroyed Kuminga basically the whole. I mean, he had 3 and 1s against him. Now, he didn't hit the free throw on one of them, but he was toying with Kuminga. He could get Kuminga to foul him anytime he wanted to get Kuminga to foul him, and I think he knew it to the point where he was hitting the shot, even though he got Kuminga to foul him, because of the way that he had, basically the way that he had played offensively. So I think there's a case to be made for GP being out there as the fifth. But if he is, it's going to be instead of Wiggins. And so that, I think, can create its own, set of, like, I don't think you're going to see a GP, Wiggins, Kuminga, Draymond. Like, there's just not enough shooting out there at that point. Finish.
Quinones.
Maybe tonight.
Quinones and those 4. Yeah.
Maybe tonight. It is just Dubs, by the way. Here, JD and Greg Silver for KNBR, the sports leader. Yeah, no break. I got your text about taking the, about the break. Yeah, no break here. I do think we should, keep things rolling on into the next 90 minutes or so as we keep this thing going. It's just Dubs on a Saturday here, KNBR, the sports leader. And appreciate everybody who's filing in on a Saturday morning. What else strikes as far as maybe some of the comments or the chat at this point, Greg? Give me your thoughts on all of this stuff. Like, who would you start? I know I kind of gave you a little bit of a wild card, but how would you play it with Steph out?
I actually don't hate the idea of doing the Podziemski, Moody, Wiggins, Kuminga, Draymond, just because you keep.
But it's not where you were going, though. But it's not what you had thought, right? Come on, what
you mean? You're? No. I don't think that what you said was going to be my guess.
Oh, okay. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Good.
What I was going to say though is going back to because it's San Antonio and you have a little bit more of a leeway to kind of test things out. I'm okay doing this younger, more experimental starting lineup where you put Podziemski in a starting role. And that's because 4 of your 5 starters would be people that are now used to starting and kind of have that rhythm. And then Moody was the 5th one who's kind of been the spot starter when Wiggins took his absence. So I think you can try it out. And if it's not working well at all, just go quick to the bench and put Chris Paul in or put Klay Thompson in quicker than you might have done otherwise. Like, I think because you have a weaker opponent coming in without their best player, who's just a monstrous defensive presence, by the way. I mean, that is intimidating where the league is headed with Wemby. But I think with the matchup in mind, I would actually be more in the boat of let's do Brandon Podziemski, Moses Moody, and then your other 3 in the front court. And if it's not working, just go quick to the bench, and there's no shame in that. But I don't hate your idea of where you're coming from with if you're going to start Chris Paul, why not put Klay Thompson there with him just because of how well those 2 have been together. But yeah, I would probably disagree. Yeah, you have to have the shooting. So But yeah, I'd probably overall disagree, but I don't necessarily hate your train of thought, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and again, I do believe, as we've said, there's just more wiggle room to play with it. Like if you were playing, I'll just say this: if you're playing Dallas and the Lakers tonight and Monday, you can't get away with Podziemski and Moody, and you can't do Podziemski, Moody, Kuminga, Wiggins, and Draymond. Like that's not that to me. That's a starting lineup that could get you buried against one of those teams. But against San Antonio, if you want to test it out, if you want to maybe get some continuity there, then I think you could look to do it. But then the other big picture question is, maybe if you knew you were going to miss Steph for 3 weeks, you would have to go more leaning in on your best players, basically, as far as all right, you got it. But because it's only going to be a couple of games, maybe you do tinker with it a little bit more as to not upset, some of that other rotation as far as the, having Clay and Chris Paul be comfortable. I just don't see how you have one of the great point guards in NBA history and, the Clay part out of it. Like, I think Chris Paul is starting tonight. Like that part, I'm 100%. Like Clay may still come off the bench, but, and again, the shortest distance is a straight line. And it's like, all right, well, Steph's out. You just plug Chris Paul in and you just keep Podziemski in because Podziemski's been in. Like, what's the most likely scenario? The most likely scenario is probably he just starts Chris Paul and Brandon Podziemski and with Wiggins, Kuminga and Draymond Green. That would be my bet as to what he's going to do. If he's going to make more than one move, then I think he would go to Klay Thompson over maybe Moses Moody.
Yeah, I hear you on that. And I think you're probably right that Chris Paul will start. Like, I'm not saying that's what I think is going to happen and that's what he should do. It's what I'm most curious to see against the San Antonio. But you're also right in that if your opponent tonight is Dallas, I'm not lobbying for the Podziemski, Moody, Wiggins, Kuminga, Draymond starting lineup. I'm lobbying for, no, you put one of the all-time great point guards in, even if he's 38 years old, because you can't just throw all these young guys out there and try to dig yourselves in a hole. And your only shooting at that point for your first quarter is Draymond because he makes all the first quarter threes.
That's true. Draymond's basically Steph in the first quarter. He's basically
better.
Steph Curry.
He's better statistically.
Well, at one point, I mean, I don't know if it dipped based on, but he was 40% basically from three. Like he was 40. Like at some point in the last couple of games, I haven't looked up what his overall is right now. It may have dipped below. It may even be a little bit higher. But he's shooting 40%. I mean, that was the best I think in 6 years for Draymond. And, really the only, I mean, I go back to, I know we've played this game before as far as that 2016 season, the 73 win season, when I think he was like 38% from three. Other than that, that's basically been the outlier of his career to this point is that specific year where he shot the 38. But look, I always, people that listen to me throughout the years, and I kind of got roasted for this one, Greg. I always said that there was room for Draymond to become a better 3-point shooter again. And like I think he was on track to be fine as a 3-point shooter, but then they went and they got Kevin Durant, and I feel like he just quit work. I just feel like because they had Durant, he was like, you know what, I'm just going to quit. I'm basically going to quit trying to worry about having to be a great 3-point shooter because he's so important in so many other ways, especially with that team that now had Kevin Durant. He's like, you know what? I can pass these shots up and, teams are going to be daring me to take them, but I'm not going to take them because we're going to get the ball to Durant, or we're going to get the ball to Steph, we're going to get the ball to Clay. And
well, you also had in that lineup, we're talking possibly the 3 best shooters in the league, or like 3 of the best 4 or 5 at most.
Yeah.
Like maybe the 3 best shooters in the entire league.
Sure. So I think he just ditched. I just think he ditched even trying to be a decent 3-point shooter, and then never really could get it back. Maybe when he wanted to get it back. But I always thought that he had the ability to become an acceptable 3-point shooter again. or at least enough of a threat to where he could burn some. I don't think he's ever going to be somebody that the teams are going to come out and like, oh, we got to defend him out there. Maybe a little bit in an individual game, but the point is you want to be able to make a team pay. And I think, Draymond has been able to make some teams pay at least early in games by knocking down a lot of those threes. I want to go back to CA's comment real quick, the question on GP2, because I just want to make sure that we answered it appropriately. I know sometimes we get off on three different tangents. Something will spark me out of the question as we start rolling through it. But yes, I mean, he is on the team for on-ball defense. I do think part of the game against Chicago was he just didn't play well early in that game, and they are petrified of losing him again for a month or 6. Like, they've had 2 or 3 injury scares this year with GP where it's like he might be out for the season or out for months. And then it has turned out not to be the case. And I think there is a correlation in some of their numbers with playing him too much and that leading to the injuries. And so I think they're really hell bent on 15 to 20 max. I think they could expand that for a playoff series, but he's been, and you've seen this with how they've handled him in the rotation. It's basically been, he comes in for Kuminga right about at the 7-minute mark, or Wiggins, but mostly it's been Kuminga at the 7-minute mark, and then basically plays 4 minutes. And then Kuminga comes right back in for him and finishes the quarter. Like, so it's these little 4-minute, and that gives you an opportunity. All right, he plays a little 4-minute burst. He could play another 4-minute burst in the second quarter, and it's basically 4 4-minute bursts. And so that leaves him anywhere, it leaves him right around that 16-minute mark. Maybe you bump it up a little bit here and there, but I just think they really want to just keep him as fresh as possible and not lose him to a big time injury right before the playoffs. Because anything now, as we were talking about the other night with Steph, right? If a month right now is basically season ending. A month injury right now is, takes you to the final 3 games of the regular season.
Yeah, and I guess what I would add to that is that not that GP2 and Wiggins are the same player, because they're not, but defensively for on the ball and that purpose, I think you see them being able to do similar things and possess similar skill sets. When you talk about facing a Kings team and you got to deal with a De'Aaron Fox, like GP2 can be that guy to go and get those spot minutes and try to shut down a De'Aaron Fox, but so can Andrew Wiggins. So Gary Payton II is sort of a one-of-a-kind player on this roster, but on regards to on-ball defense, not entirely at the same time, because you have a Wiggins. And I think Kuminga's on-ball defense has actually been pretty good for the most part, too. By the way, to revisit the Draymond
especially against
stats,
littler players. Especially against smaller players. Kuminga's better against smaller players also than he is against guys that are like size.
I was going to say on Draymond's stats, for the season on threes, he's still 43.5%, which is hilarious given how terrible he's been in the second half.
Yeah, he's got, 4 makes in the second half, I think? Maybe?
I think 3.
4.
Did he have one against Chicago?
I thought he did, actually.
Oh, if he did,
or maybe
then
he
it's
had
4.
or maybe he had one against Milwaukee. I think. Well, no, he had 2 in one of the last 2 games. He had 2 in the second half, and I think
that was Milwaukee.
And I think that sent it from 2 to 4. I think, but it might have sent it from 1
I
to
thought
3.
it was. I think the one against the Lakers right after the All-Star break was the first one, and then the 2 against Milwaukee were 2-3.
I want to say he had 1 more mixed in there, but again don't quote me on that one. But yeah, he did hit the back-to-back 3-pointers that were huge and helped the Warriors obviously turn that game, basically end that game as well. So I think that's the deal with GP2. Again, I do think they're in a tricky spot with their rotation, and I think trying to work Wiggins back in has created less of a order and flow to the Warriors rotation the last two games. And I think it was really apparent in the Chicago game. Like, until Wiggins can play his normal 25 to 30, I think it's kind of held everything else up a little bit and made it a little less rhythmic, let's say, than it had been. Like, the Warriors had it dialed with Wiggins and then without Wiggins, basically, on that road trip, throw the Boston game out, but the rotation was basically set and smooth, and the pieces all fit together. And, again, I don't know that I've done a great job of explaining exactly why I felt like it was a little bit off, but I thought the Chicago game, just watching it, felt disjointed in a way that the first 40 games were disjointed. Like that, the Chicago game specifically, to me, felt like a game from December, felt like a game from early January, where it just, the pieces didn't really seem to fit. And obviously it doesn't help when Steph's not shooting it well. And obviously it doesn't help when Kuminga, although he did get to the free throw line a lot, but he took some bad shots, I thought, early in the game, and didn't have his best offensive game. Although I do think he really played a very scrappy game for not having his best offensive game. And the free throws were important. I mean, we're talking about him not having a great offensive game, but he still had 19 points. But it felt more like it just felt more like a first half of the season game. And then to have the Warriors ultimately lose it, I think just, you just add that right in. Like, it was basically very much in line with a lot of the first half, and a lot of the first half at home, Greg.
Yeah, no, I was not ideal to see. And the thing with Wiggins is he has certain opponents he'll play better against, I've noticed. And I know that's not like a super uncommon thing for some NBA players, but it is weird that Wiggins 2 years ago seemed to just be playing really well against most teams. Now it's like, I think he plays really well against the Lakers, I've noticed. He plays well against Dallas among them. And then there's some games where I wouldn't even say there's a crazy difference in the matchup, but he does seem to kind of disappear, and there is a little bit more of this disjointed feel like you're talking about. So it's weird. I'm going to give Wiggins a little bit of leeway just because, he's also clearly playing through something that we don't know exactly what it is. And I hope he kind of rounds into form as he kind of gets more reps here. We actually have a comment from our X stream, which is doing very well today, from Shen1,
Awesome.
talking about the stats and Clay shooting better at this point when he comes off the bench. Yes, very true. Clay off the bench right now is averaging almost 19 points, and his shooting splits are pretty good. He's had like 3 games where he's shooting over 50% on field goals, and then a lot of like mid-40s in there too. Really, that Lakers game, his second one off the bench, was kind of his only true low point. Then, of course, against Denver, he came out on fire in the first half. And as a starter, he hasn't been as efficient. He's averaging almost 17 points, but he's shooting just 36% from 3 and 41.5% overall. And he's taken 14 shots a game, just with an average of making about 6 of them. So I do think that bench Clay is ideally where you want to have him. The tricky thing is that when you don't have a Steph Curry available, it becomes like what JD was saying, of at some point you just lean on your better players rather than like, okay, we're going to keep you right here, Clay, and we're going to start Lester Quinones over you just because that's kind of the formula. Like that's the tricky thing, right?
No, and again, it's pick your poison. Like, if you want to keep Clay in his normal spot, then you're gonna have Chris Paul and Podziemski, start in the backcourt, and so you run the risk of maybe being a little bit too small in the backcourt, and so I think that's something that the Warriors are going to have to angle for. I know I'm just summarily dismissing the notion that it's going to be Podziemski and Moody, and look, maybe I'll be wrong. Again, they're playing San Antonio, which I do think gives Steve Kerr more freedom. Like, I'm sort of not again, if they're playing Dallas tonight, I think it'd be Chris Paul and Klay Thompson. If they're playing the Lakers tonight, I think it'd be Chris Paul and Klay Thompson. I think CP is going to be out there in all likelihood, but I totally understand wanting to keep Klay Thompson in the bench role, even if you take CP out of the bench role and make him a starter, because you could basically play him the first 6 minutes, sub him out, 6-7 minutes, sub him out, still bring him back to where he's part of that bench group at the beginning of the second and fourth quarters. Now it does get a little trickier in the fourth quarter because you don't want him to necessarily have to play the whole fourth quarter in a lump. So they may have to figure out ways to buy a little bit of time for him. But again, all of these problems are better problems for the Warriors to have, because as Alpha Nickelberry pointed out early on, if Steph is only out for 2 games, that's a huge win. And that's a big fact. If he's only out for 2 games, huge win. Again, we'll see. I think it's going to be at least 2. We'll get more clarity on that, I think, a little bit later on today, probably around 3:30, 3:45, when Steve Kerr's going to meet with the media at Chase Center before the Warriors face the Spurs. No Wemby tonight, no Steph tonight, but still an extremely important game, and the first of 2 really important games. I know the Dallas game on Wednesday and the Laker game in LA a week from today are the games that everybody's got circled, but winning these next 2, let's just say it this way. If Steph's going to miss the next 4, if Steph's going to miss tonight, Monday, Spurs, at Dallas, at the Lakers, and then let's say he's good to go 10 days from yesterday, which would be Monday when they're back home to take on the Knicks on the 18th for that 3-game homestand. If Steph has to miss the next 4, the really, really important games are tonight and Monday, because those if Steph has to miss the next 4, let's just be honest, they're not beating Dallas and they're not beating the Lakers in all likelihood, barring some incredible performances from some guys I just don't see it.
I mean, you're talking 30 plus from Kuminga and probably close to 30 from Klay, and good defense.
And good defense, and the bench, and all of it.
And Draymond's not getting in foul trouble. It's a lot of things.
Yeah, look, fortunately for the Warriors, they haven't had to live in this non-Steph Curry world this year. But one of the big headlines coming into the season and questions coming into the season was, you traded Jordan Poole. Trading Jordan Poole was the right move, except for one thing. Jordan Poole helped the Warriors win 14 out of 26 games last year when Steph Curry was out. And Steph Curry's been out in the 20s over and over and over of recent years, and the Warriors have been able to withstand it. The question was, if Steph has to miss that level of games, could the Warriors survive it? The reality is the Warriors haven't had to survive it, because he's only missed 3, and tonight will be 4, and then we'll go from there. But they haven't had to survive it. And so, that's the one thing about that, where the Warriors really have been lucky this year, because it's, an instance where, where would they have been if Steph had to miss most of December as poorly as they were playing in December? They would have been far more than 5. They would have been far more than 5 games under 500 at the end of January if Steph had to miss 3 weeks in December. So thankfully for the Warriors, he didn't have to do that this year. But look, every year's different. I do think the Warriors are going to have to build in next year, and they really didn't this year. I think they did and they didn't. They did by getting Chris Paul, but that came with its own risk, because Chris Paul is not going to fill the scoring void of Stephen Curry. So that came with its own risk, Greg, of not having that guy that you could plug in that could really score. I know you put the comment on the screen. We can put that one back up if you want.
May have lost it.
All right, we can address it. It was basically the Warriors look foolish for trading Jordan Poole. Was it
I'll do
no
some
cap?
looking. I'll do some looking. Yeah, it was no cap.
No cap. Yeah, I don't. And no cap says I don't think they can win any games with Steph out. They should have kept Jordan Poole. Pods and CP can't carry a team. Yeah, organization looks foolish now trading Poole. I knew Steph would get hurt. None of those guys can carry a team like Poole. No, and Lester can't either, JD. No, nobody's saying Lester can. I'm just saying Lester's probably going to play. And, so get ready. So brace yourselves, Warrior fans. Like Lester Quinones is in the rotation tonight and Monday. And really until Steph is back, Lester Quinones is going to be in the rotation. I would imagine he would be the player. Moody's already in the rotation. So, get ready for the whole, Moody played 18 and Lester played 12. That means Moody should have played 30 and Lester played like it obviously doesn't work that way because they'll be on the floor together at certain points. But
why is Dario Saric on the floor?
Exactly. But so again, I think the Warriors have to this point, no cap, made it through the season to where they're not going to get totally burned. They're not going to get totally burned by the one area in which they could have been burned by the Steph Curry or by the Jordan Poole trade. Again, if he'd had to miss a month earlier in the year, then I think maybe we're having a little bit of a different conversation about it. And so let's see here. Douglas Mike's weighing in on the rotation. I think it just complicates things. I think he's responding to my saying, go with Chris Paul and Clay. If everybody's healthy, Kurt would start Steph, Podziemski, Wiggins, Kuminga, Draymond, keep some consistency and just keep CP3 and Clay off the bench. So yeah, he didn't like my idea of bringing them both off. I get it. But you also have to weigh what does your starting lineup look like? And again, I think we're basically, those that are like, just keep Chris and Clay off the bench are saying what? They're saying go with Moody at the 2 and Podziemski at the 1. Like, again, San Antonio, it's kind of a YOLO, although they could beat. But that's the other thing. If you make the wrong starting lineup call tonight and you go too young or too inexperienced, if you do that, it may give San Antonio the window to beat you. And that, so it really is. It's can you get away with playing a younger starting lineup against the Spurs? Yes, you could, but you also, that could be the thing that winds up wrecking you in the game. Again, I think the most likely scenario is Chris Paul just starts with Podziemski. And it's Steph's out. You need to replace Steph. Let's not overthink it. Who are you going to replace Steph with? You're going to replace Steph with one of the greatest point guards of all time. Like that, like who's been a bench player for it. Like to me, that to me is like a no. That's like, I would be stunned if CP's still coming off the bench. I would not be stunned if Clay's still coming off the bench. I would be stunned. And I'll come right out of the gate tonight and at Harmonic Brewing in Thrive City and just be like, wow, crazy. But I think CP's starting tonight.
I think you're probably right. I wouldn't put money on the Podziemski Moody backcourt, but it was kind of like when I brought it up, I'm kind of thinking curiosity. And I get what you're saying. If you mess this up, I don't care if it's San Antonio that's coming in without Wemby. You give a team in the NBA a window to beat you. And by the way, the Warriors have kind of struggled against undermanned teams this year. Heat, terrible game. Grizzlies on the road, terrible game. But I also think that you can pull the plug on that pretty quickly within like 3 minutes and just be like, all right, Chris, get off the bench. Let's go.
Yeah, no, you could. No, you definitely could. And we've seen that. Like, just because you start doesn't mean that, just because you're starting doesn't mean that you're going to be, out there all the time. Like, there are plenty of guys in the NBA who start and basically play the first 4 or 5 minutes of the half, and that's all they play for the entire game on a lot of teams. And we've seen the Warriors do that at times with players. We've seen the Warriors do that at times with Looney, basically.
Hey, there's one comment I need to address, but I need to go grab something. So you talk for like 20 seconds.
Sure.
I'll be right back.
Well, I'm gonna reference some of these no cap 757. Chris Paul will give you 10 points most nights. Yeah, look, he's going to have to give the Warriors 10 to 15. He's not giving you 30. Like Steph has been giving you. So I think that's an opportunity. Alex, 10-day deal, perfect time. Like Alex is chiming in with some, Patty Mills. Patty Mills signed with somebody. Who did Patty Mills sign with? Miami or Milwaukee? Or Patty Mills signed with somebody, I thought. Let me Google that.
Was it he did. Why am I forgetting?
Let's see. He signed with, or he's gonna sign with Heat. He signed with the Miami Heat. Yeah, the Heat are signing Patty Mills after he had been traded and bought out and all of that. So it's just Dubs here on a Saturday morning. It's JD, it's Greg Silver. We've been going here for about an hour, and we're going to keep it rolling for another hour here as we do each and every Saturday. We love everybody watching on YouTube and Twitch. We love being able to dig into the comments as we like to do. Still looking at adding a caller portion to this, but that's a work in progress. And honestly, I think we've been pretty happy with the interactions that we've had to this point as far as the commenters and everything goes, to where, I think there's a nice balance. And on the days where we're not going to be on the radio for this show, it's nice to be able to give our regulars a little bit more of the floor. Our question of the day, you guys
are awesome.
Informal question of the day is just, who do you start who do you start with Steph out? What's your starting five? I think, the Wiggins, Kuminga, Draymond part isn't going to change. Is it as simple as Steph is out and CP3 is in? Do you need to make another move? I kind of feel like you need to make another move. Opponent be damned. You need to make another move if you're going to put Chris Paul into the starting lineup. I would put Chris and Clay back into the starting lineup. But again, if it's only a short-term injury for Steph, then I can understand why maybe you wouldn't want to be jerking Clay around with, all right, you're back in. We know you really want to be in. Now you're back out. Get readjusted to it. When really overall the numbers have dictated that Clay's played really well off the bench, and we had somebody, the numbers have been better, smaller sample size, all of that. So most likely scenario, I think it's Chris Paul in the starting lineup with Podziemski. They just roll with the small backcourt. And then, as you said, in a different way, but I think what you said plays, you just, if you're too small, you just don't play those two together for very long, and make some other adjustments throughout the game to where you don't have to. What did you want to bring up that you needed 20 seconds for, that now we're back here? 2 orders of business. 1, Douglas Mikes. Yes. We are on after the Spurs game. Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. Harmonic for JD. Item number 2. You saw me last night through a screen. What was I wearing?
Yeah. That's right. I do remember. You want me to actually say it?
Yeah, I want you to say it.
Okay. Yeah. Greg had his Kevon Looney jersey on. He had his Kevon Looney jersey on, and so there it is. The old Kevon Looney number 5. Big Kevon Looney fans, the both of us. And can we discuss the Looney streak being broken by a DNP CD? Yeah, what was the number on Looney? It was 240. I have it. Again, it was long. It was
264 or something like that.
If you added in the playoffs, it was 264. And you look at it, and actually I want to
289, 289 if you count playoffs.
Yeah, I want to make sure I get the right number here, and so I am gonna look at it. It was, forgive me here, this is bad YouTube, but it's worse on the radio when you kind of pause and stammer. I think on YouTube it's whatever. Like we're just
they can see our perplexed faces and everything.
We're just trying.
By the way, while you're looking for it, I'll go with another quick aside. So, Erwin, sure. I know that everyone was roasting me the last time I had a shirt underneath the jersey. So, 2 things. 1, I don't do that in everyday life, but if you were around KNBR with one of our old coworkers, the no sleeves thing is what our morning show would just roast you for. So I'm always like, I'd rather sacrifice the fashion and not get put on blast for the no sleeves in the workspace. Number 2 is I don't know if I'm at the point now in my, media/radio life where I can't be wearing jerseys anymore, but Looney had to represent yesterday for all the consecutive games. And 289. 289. It's crazy.
Yeah, no, it's crazy for sure. And yeah, I actually got caught up. See, this is the thing. I'm so stream of consciousness that I actually I went to look it up, and when I went to look it up, I realized that I was going to put out a tweet, basically a promo tweet, and so I'm like, oh damn, I got to finish the promo tweet. So I ended up finishing the promo tweet and not running it back as far as looking for the actual number, but you found the actual number. So yeah, it was a long time coming. And so I think Steve Kerr went to Looney, and maybe this would be a good, pregame question for Steve today that I could potentially ask. I'm not sure if Copes and Tom discussed this with Steve last night, but I would look at I would imagine that Steve went to Loon and was like, hey, like I may not get you in. And I would imagine Looney was like, yeah, you know what, 289 is a hell of a run. Like it doesn't need to be 290. Like, and I wonder if Steve, given the circumstances, he probably wouldn't even have to say this because Looney's all about winning and helping the team. And I do think there's going to come a point between now and the end of the season, whether it's a regular season or playoffs, where Looney is going to come back and help. Like I would almost guarantee it. Like there's going to be a Looney game where he really helps them win that game, even if he's basically somebody that's just not going to play for the time being. And he is still, I think, he's a valuable playoff player. And physically hasn't quite looked the same. And I wonder if maybe him getting a few weeks where he doesn't play a lot might, shore him up a little bit physically to where he can be somebody that Steve can tap on the shoulder. But long-winded answer on that. But I would imagine Steve went to Looney and was like, hey, I'm aware of it. And I would imagine Looney was like, yeah, whatever. It's fine. It's gone long enough. I'm not playing well, whatever the team needs. Let's rip the Band-Aid off. But I know you want to make sure to show a little appreciation for, not the fact necessarily that it ended, but everything that he brought to the table over the 289.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't that long ago that he was the second, and I mean a close second, most important player in a playoff series in the Sacramento series last year.
He was their second best player in that series.
Oh, by far. Yeah. He was a lot closer to 1 than 3, in my opinion, if you think about the Kings' strengths.
The last playoff series the Warriors won, Kevon Looney was their second best player. Like, go figure.
Yeah. And I think, I don't know if I would say that Looney didn't care, because I do think it was a big source of pride for him when he had injuries early in his career to be able to play all 82. And I think he did it in the year when they were, did he do it in the year that they were 15-50 and everyone was gone and Looney still played every game?
No, that was actually the year that he had struggled with the neuropathy. And
okay.
So no, it was after that that Looney was able to come back and be a bigger. Remember Wiseman started the first 10 or 12 games of his career, which was the following season. They had the 9.
That's right.
Yeah, the 9.5 month break, and then but no, it was the following year, and then. The championship year and last year and then now this year. So but there were times where it looked in 2019, 2020 as if Kevon Looney's career might be in jeopardy then. So for him to get another contract from the Warriors, for him to be a starting player on a championship team, I mean, what it looked like in March of 2020, when everything shut down, basically 4 years ago Monday, it looked like for him to have done what he's done has been, I think, in many ways remarkable. But yeah, he he fixed his body and really worked hard on it. I know he's been a big yoga guy. I know he's also made reference to the fact that he's changed his diet. And that kind of helped him get through it. But yeah, you look at 61 out of the 72 games in the 2020-2021 season, and then 82, and 60 of 61, or 61 of 62 for the Warriors this season with now 20 games to go. So it's a hell of a run. 61, 82, 82, 61.
That's a nice little bookend there. But, and I'll say this, like, for a fact that Steve Kerr not only loves Kevon Looney, which I think everyone knows, he always has been a big Looney guy. Like, the day that Kevin Durant agreed to go to the Nets back in 2019, and then they did the sign and trade to get D'Angelo Russell, and then Andre was traded, I will tell you all for a fact, Steve Kerr was very bummed about Andre Iguodala getting traded, and he was very happy about holding on to Kevon Looney that day. And those were the two lesser storylines under the KD free agency. So I think he's always really appreciated what he's brought to the table. I do think for Looney, it's been a source of pride for him to keep that streak going. But I'll agree with JD in that when you say like he doesn't care, I don't think he would have like thrown a fit about the conversation. I think he's always been a total pro about how he's handled any of the playing time stuff or be ready when your name is called upon. So I'm sure he wasn't, pouting about it, but you put a lot of work in that, and it's probably a big source of pride for him. And I truly believe that if they make the playoffs, he will get called upon at some point. And I would say, speaking from a biased perspective, I'll put Looney in the category of your Steph, your Clay, and your Draymond, of guys that you never truly want to count out.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And, again, he hasn't had the best season, but he's helped them win 3. Wait, is it 3 or 2? No, he's helped them win, I guess, really the last 2. He's been there for 3. He's been there for 3, but the 18 championship and the 22 championship were the 2 where he was the biggest part of it. But yeah, he was there for the 17 championship as well. It's funny. I was looking at Kevon Looney. I was sort of everything kind of running together in my head, and I was like, Jesus, he was drafted in 2015. He was drafted before the 73 win season, and then didn't really get on the floor much until that 17-18 season. And I'll never forget, I think there was some question in training camp, like, was he going to even make the team that year? And not only did he make the team, but I want to say he ended up starting opening night, and it was like, or he ended up in the rotation maybe opening night of that year. And it was like, oh, like, damn, like he really, and he ended up being huge, obviously, against the Rockets, and he was huge in the playoff run the next year, huge in the championship run, and huge in the playoff series against Sacramento. Again, if the Warriors don't have Kevon Looney, they don't win that series against Sacramento last year. Like, straight up. Like, he was, I know we've said it a few times, but he was their second best player after Steph. And I don't know, based on the way that he's played, if he could have the same impact against Sabonis that he did last year, because he just physically hasn't maybe looked as right. And I know Sabonis played pretty well against everybody the last time that those two teams played. It was the best that he's, I think, ever played against the Warriors in the last couple of years. But he basically erased Sabonis, and made him ineffective in that series.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I remember Kings media even after the fact was like, "Yeah, that's my bad. I underestimated Looney." A bit of Looney trivia for everybody on the chat.
They couldn't believe it. There's no doubt.
Kevon Looney is jersey number 5, as you all know. Do you remember what his first jersey number was with this Warriors franchise back as a rookie? Do you know the answer,
man.
JD?
Oh, man. Kevon Looney jersey numbers. Know your Kevon Looney jersey numbers. Short answer is no. I don't remember what it was. He's 5. What was it? Was he?
Jason says 15. No, good guess though. That was Damian Jones.
I can't remember. Yeah, I can't remember.
I'll
Tell
give
me.
I'll give people like 30 seconds.
Let somebody win a prize. Let somebody win a prize.
32. No, not you're warmer though. I'll tell you that, but not quite 32.
Was it like 26 or something? Like random? It was
not the worst guess. Not the worst guess, but incorrect.
Some random number. All right. Well, yeah. Let a few people chime in. Let's get into another question here. And it was Rice Guy 01 from about 40 minutes ago. As I kind of go through, I like to go through these in like chronological order just to make sure that we hit them all. It's nice to have the StreamYard interface to be able to kind of bookmark them and hold them and come back to them. But Rice Guy 01, is Kuminga the clear number 1 scorer now? I think for the next couple of games that it's logical to think that. And although it's sort of the San Antonio rule for me on that, like I don't think Kuminga being the number 1 scorer is necessarily a great thing if you're playing Dallas or the Lakers or some of those teams. But against San Antonio, it's like, yeah, sure, why not? Like let him, like somebody's going to have to score. And again, we'll see what Steve Kerr does with the starting lineup. But I mean, I think Kuminga, if Kuminga is the clear number 2 right now, then that would mean with your number 1 out, your number 2 would become your number 1. I do think the Warriors are going to have to be careful with how they, I feel like they've gone to Kuminga a little too much in terms of isolation. Like let him look to play make and just, set up his own jumper. Like, I don't love that. I know he did it pretty well against Milwaukee. He didn't really do it well against Chicago. I think it's kind of be hit or miss. But again, against San Antonio, the next couple of games, somebody's got to score. And I do think that's the kind of matchup where if he takes 20, 25 shots, I think you live with it and you see how it goes. Because the one thing we know is he's going to be willing. And I think the Warriors do need somebody that's willing to be aggressive in this current iteration and look to score. I also think that's the case for Klay Thompson a little bit with the starters, in that, you do need 2 guys that are capable. And I think, Klay's shooting, Kuminga's interior presence, I do think that sort of helps the whole thing have a little bit more balance. And I think having Klay out there would actually help Kuminga be able to not have to just be the one, as much as he's probably thinking I'm the one now and loving it. Like I think Kuminga's thinking, yeah, I get 25 shots tonight. And against San Antonio, sure. Again, why not? Like the Warriors don't really have a choice, and let's see how he can do. I think it's a good test to see how he can do as a number 1 that maybe the Warriors are going to more, as much as I think when the Warriors have really, and again, going to him is different than like, because sometimes people think they're going to him when it's just like, oh, he ends up with a dunk here, a dunk. Like, no, a lot of times when they're going to him, it's when he's drawing. He does draw fouls when they do that, but some of those isolations that turn into turnaround jumpers or turn into more awkward layup attempts that get blocked or get missed. Like when they've really made a point to, we're going to run a play for you to like get you the ball and let you go to work, like you're Patrick Ewing in the post. That's where it hasn't quite gone as well. And so, when it's been the cuts and the ball movement and he's in the dunker spot, or he's in a point where the defense is completely off balance and he can make one move and get all the way to the cup, those are the areas where he's thrived. But I don't know. Weigh in on that. I'm probably going to get called a hater, even though I'm saying YOLO. Let him be the one and take 25 shots, people.
I actually thought Tom Tolbert gave a pretty entertaining but fair analogy on the air yesterday in the afternoon, saying that Kuminga doesn't really have the green light in every regard yet, even though he might think he could with Steph Curry being out. He talked about how, like bowling, you got those little rails,
Sure.
the little bumper rails, and he's like, if you don't have the rails on Kuminga, he's just going to throw it as hard as he can. It's going to be a speedy ball, and it might end up in the gutter.
Right.
And
it might end up being a strike. It might end up being a strike, I think, in fairness. But
100%. Yeah. If it touches a pin, it's not going to ball down.
Right. Exactly.
But yeah, no, I think that, there's a good chance. I like when Kuminga is a bully inside, because it's like, dude, you can jump higher than just about every player in the NBA. I think one of the best things he's done all year is the way he's able to get to the line and get free throws, because the Warriors aren't really a free throw shooting team. Stephen Curry doesn't get a lot of free throws for reasons that fans like to have fun with, for sure. And Kuminga's been great about getting free throws. And yeah, Trace Jackson-Davis can get free throws, but he's not a great free throw shooter at this point in his career. And Draymond Green doesn't really get to the line that much. Clay rarely gets to the line. So I think Kuminga's got to use that to his strength. But it's the, turnaround fadeaway jumpers or jacking up a lot of threes that's where it could get a little bit dicey, being like, well, I got to score. And I'm not saying he can't shoot or he's never allowed to. It just needs to be a secondary part of his game. And sometimes he needs to be reminded of that. Like what you said, JD, about the Boston game, I think was perfectly fair without hating on him, which is like, the Celtics are really good at defending. They have big bodies. They're long. It's not as easy for Kuminga to just post up and go one-on-one. And they kind of broke his will a little bit into taking some tough shots that he just didn't really hit a lot of them. Like, that's a fair thing to say, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I think without a doubt, it's a fair thing to say. And so we'll see. As far as Kuminga goes, I think this is an opportunity for him. I love Tom's breakdown of it. I think that's really well put and well said. And look, the bottom line is they're gonna need him to score, and he's been their second best scorer. To me, it's just a matter of how he gets them. I think is the most important part. And look, there have been games where he knocked down a couple threes. There have been games where he's hit the little turnaround, Kobe jumper. But I think he is at his best when it's basically all dunks and layups, or he's getting to the free throw line. And I think there is going to have to be a balance with Steph out to more making sure everybody's involved in the flow of everything. Alex, pace and decisions. Is that that's a Kuminga comment? Erwin Kwong checking in. Wiggins would have been the ideal defender, going back to an early conversation from the Warriors roster against fourth quarter DeRozan. Yeah. And again, I think that was, I just like Wiggins. I found the first two Wiggins games back frustrating. And I don't even know that it's really his fault. I just thought he'd be able to provide more minutes. And, the question I do believe was asked, I think on Tuesday, is there going to be a minutes restriction? And I think the answer was no, but clearly there's a minutes restriction. Clearly there's a minutes restriction. And Erwin also checking in. I'll let you chime in on Wiggins. JD and Greg Silver with the new camera angles. Yes. I love the new camera angles. We don't need the close up of my face. We don't need this shot. We don't need this shot of my face always. I hate that. I absolutely despise that. Sometimes we have that shot. I hate that shot. Thank you. I know I should have just let you adjust it. But yeah, let's back it off a little bit. Let's get Willie in the corner here. Willie Mays, that's where we want to be. So yeah, Erwin, I appreciate you noticing and not crushing me for still not having my ficus in the background or my corner shelving in the background. Greg's got I still think JD needs a hamster wheel behind him or an ant farm. Yeah, it's not a snow globe incoming. No calling today. What's the latest? Unfortunately, no calling today. But again, that's something we are still working on, and I'm 95% sure that will happen here between now and the end of the season. But we're still trying to work out some kinks on that. Yeah, no Steph today. Steph has officially been ruled out. We should continue to to kind of update people on that. I think a formal announcement from the team probably at some point around 3:30. Everything that's been reported from Woj to Shams to Anthony Slater to Monty Poole, optimistic, MRI clean, anywhere between 1 to 4 games, 7 to 10 days. Warriors feeling good about the way his ankle responded. I'm cobbling together reports. Pieces of everything I just said were from Woj, Shams, Slater, and Monty Poole. So hat tip to them. I'm not going to go into who said what exactly, but those guys all said a portion of that with their reporting yesterday. So credit to them. But
you know what I think? Not to get completely off of basketball.
Jump in on everything. I do it.
I'm just laughing at the chat with all of these people talking about the plants now. Everyone's into the plants with the fiddly. I kind of think your next decoration, though, I think we need to have a running list of people that you buy drinks at Harmonic that they get to sign as a fan of the show. You get to take it to Harmonic, and then you get to display it on the wall. It gets to go back and forth.
It gets to go back. Okay, I think we can do that. I think that's something we can add. There have been a couple now. We had our first couple the other night. It was Billy Joe and Alamo was the first one, and I wrote down the other one because we got late in the show and I ended up not. But yeah, and the offer still stands. By the way, stop by Harmonic and say, hey, I was watching this morning, or I'm a big Dubs OT fan on KNBR, and yeah, I'll buy you a brew. I'll buy you a brew. You just check in with me. I'll make the nod to Mike or Julia or Grace or Jimmy or whoever's there, Shay, and put it on the JD tab. I got you covered. No doubt. I think Erwin Kwong's going to be in that mix at some point. I think Erwin's going to get his brew at Harmonic at some point. If I had to bet on our regulars, I think Erwin's the number one guy that I would bet on as far as showing up at Harmonic and getting himself a free brew.
Now, Erwin makes sure that everybody's taken care of. I mean, there have been a couple times in the chat where he's concerned that I don't have a brew while you're at Harmonic. And as kind as that is, I don't think maybe one brew is fine during the show, but I got to focus on a lot of different things in segment one. My brain is way too wired to be sipping on the hazy at that point.
Yeah.
only when we get the sounds of silver, then I can kind of relax a little.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, I mean, you are a silver, so I think you can function. I think you can function while you consume. I think you can function while you consume. I'll just leave it at that. As far as let's see. Oh, I lost my spot here. No cap again going in. It's facts that they're not winning a game with Steph out. Pods and Paul can't carry a team like Poole. So no cap. They got to win. They're going to have to win. I think the next two, and I think you got to be optimistic that the Warriors will be able to win the next couple of games. We have people chiming in with their starting lineups. Alex says Paul, Kuminga, Wiggins, Draymond Green, and Trace Jackson Davis. I mean that's interesting. That actually, it's a Wiggins basically at the 2, with Kuminga at the 3, Draymond at the 4. Yeah, I don't love that, but I don't love that. That's an interesting, different look.
We got our FL Dubs fan chiming in too about.
Yeah, go ahead. Got to agree with JD. CP in with Clay. Least disruption to the normal system. Like BP, Brandon Pajemski is the second point guard. Do not need to see CP play with do need to see CP play with TJD even more with Steph out. And yeah, I think you can do that with that combination. You can, you could let Chris Paul play about 8 minutes and then bring Trace Jackson Davis in for a couple of minutes, middle of the quarter, they could play a couple of minutes together. And then, you could have Chris Paul sub out for 4, come back in at the beginning of the second quarter and play with Trace Jackson Davis then. So I still think you can get him 6 to 8 minutes with Trace Jackson Davis depending on the both of them, and have him still lead the second unit. Now, you're going to have to sub him out. You're going to have to let him play probably 4 or 5 and then sub him out for a couple and then finish the half, which I think can get a little bit tricky. Does Steve Kerr go that route? I think that basically remains to be seen. But I think I like Chris Paul in. I know I've said it. I like Klay Thompson in. We'll see what the Warriors ultimately do tonight. Douglas Mikes, a lineup with Moody, Wiggins, Kuminga, Draymond is the end game for our highest ceiling this season. Kerr is just delaying the inevitable. He has to start playing those guys together sooner than later. I want to see that lineup with Steph. I don't know that, again, I don't know that I want to see that lineup in another iteration. It does give you some size with Kuminga at the 4, Wiggins at the 3, Moody at the 2. Again, you can use that lineup. I don't know that it's not going to be the best lineup against every team because there is, it's not going to be. I think it has the potential to be a really good or great defensive lineup if you get Moody out there against the right matchup. But to play that lineup, Moody has to make threes, and Wiggins, I think, has to be an efficient offensive player as well as what we've seen them get from Kuminga. And then I think Steph has to be out there in that group as well. What do you think of that group, that 5?
The 5, repeat one more time.
Well, Douglas Mikes was saying Moody has to be out there. Basically, Moody, Wiggins, Kuminga, 2, 3, 4 with Draymond at the 5 is their best, basically their best highest ceiling lineup. He's assuming he's saying with Steph, and that Draymond's that Kerr's kind of sitting on it, waiting to play it. Just what do you think of that 5 with Steph as the 5th? I don't think it works necessarily otherwise, but with Steph, I think we could at least have a conversation about it.
Yeah, I think positionally it's fine. I had somebody on social media suggest a lineup of, I think it was Trace Jackson Davis, Draymond, Kuminga, Moody, and Steph, but that goes back to the whole issue of, well, Kuminga's not really a 3. So I think if we're talking about the Douglas Mikes lineup, I think it works positionally in terms of Moody can be your 2. You have Steph, obviously, and then you have this new iteration of the front court that works. As far as highest ceiling, I think if Klay's having a good night, that's going to be your highest ceiling. That's just kind of been an if, unfortunately, with him this season.
Because they really haven't lost when Steph and I shouldn't say haven't lost. They have lost some game, but when Steph and Klay are both hot, when it's like the throwback, they've got 60 combined or more. Like that has been the best. When they've had that and Kuminga 15 to 20, that's where I think they've been at their most unbeatable against even good teams. I know they've blown maybe a couple of games where they've bogged down in the fourth quarters of a couple of those games. But I'm with you. Offensively, I think their best look offensively is when Steph is going off and Klay's going off and Kuminga's going off on the interior and Wiggins is just steady, 12 to 14. Draymond's doing what Draymond does. And then you like that I think is their best template for success. Excuse me.
By the way, it's about time I reveal the Looney answer. It comes from Alex/Google. Do you have a final guess on his original jersey number?
I want to say 0 or 00 is going to be my final guess. Okay.
The answer is 36.
So it wasn't, okay, 36. That's right. Okay. I do kind of remember that now. It wasn't 26. It was 36. I said 26. I did say it was a kind of a random, you don't see a lot of 6. You don't see a lot of 6 numbers. You don't see a lot of, you see 6, but you don't see
6
16.
is retired league-wide now.
Yeah, you see 6, but you don't see 16. You would see some 6s, but not 16, 26, 36. 46.
16 you get Chetty Osman, Dinwiddie, 26.
I always think of wasn't Pau Gasol was 16, right?
Yeah. Was Rasheed Wallace 36?
I think for a game or two, maybe with the Celtics he was. I think, or not the Celtics, the Pistons. I think with the Pistons he was. At one point, I think maybe he was 36 when he got traded.
Oh, he was 30. He was 30.
30 with the Pistons, or 30 everywhere.
Yeah.
Was he 30?
Well,
was he 36? Was he 36 for Atlanta? Remember when he played the one game for Atlanta? I thought he played one game for Atlanta, and I think maybe he was 36 for that.
Rasheed Wallace. I'm on his basketball reference page right now.
Yeah. They don't do the jersey numbers on that. They don't do the jersey numbers on that like they do for baseball, unfortunately.
Oh, pain.
That I know they should. Or maybe there's a setting you have to click to bring it up for that. But what were we? Oh, Peja Stojakovic was another 16. He was 16. And obviously 6. I mean, LeBron with 6, Bill Russell with 6, now retired league wide. But yeah, so sixth man. 6 was out for sixth man in some areas. I think Sacramento had
Lance
6 retired.
Lance Stevenson might have been a 6.
Okay. Yeah, Lance Stevenson.
At least on the Lakers. I think he was. I don't know. Anyway, it's all beside the point. By the way, there was another funny comment. Oh, I got asked if I'm drinking chocolate milk. I wish, honestly. This is my.
Look like coffee.
It's my coffee. Yeah, it's the ground sinking to the bottom.
No, that's a good. Yeah, it looks. Yeah, we both got the coffee going this morning. Yours looked a little creamier than mine, though. What?
Yeah.
What did you go with? What's your go-to coffee when you're? I mean, obviously it's a home brew, but what's your go-to mix?
Well, I do like the Pete's Mocha Java blend. That's what I'm using today with this homemade cold brew. Threw a little half and half in there.
Is it a little sweet or no? Is it like naturally
a little bit?
Little added. Is there a little added sugar to the deal? A little added sugar. Is there like
manually, but not in the mix. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
not
just
in
like
the
a splash.
Okay, good. So not in the mix. And then you added the half and half. Yeah, I went with I went Starbucks cinnamon dolce.
Ooh.
Yeah, and then which is good, and then and iced this morning. This iced and no cream, no sugar. That's going to surprise nobody. Like what? JD's drinking just black coffee? Yes. Which I don't always do, but I do. I do. It is in the regular rotation.
Hey, shout out to Murph.
Is that a Murph thing or what?
Oh, Murph is like all black coffee all the time.
Yeah, give me the black coffee. Like I don't. Occasionally I might do some vanilla pumps. Like if I'm at Starbucks, I'd be like, you know what? Give me a pike. Just give me a pike. No cream, no sugar. Give me like 3 or 4 vanilla pumps. No sweetener, nothing like that. Just give me, just a little vanilla, maybe a little just a little something to mix in, to blend in there. But yeah, no, today it's no sweetener, no nothing, just a little Starbucks cinnamon dolce, with the ice, with the ice version. So yeah.
Which Warrior do you think is the biggest, coffee fan, coffee little fancy guy? I kind of would pick.
I feel like Clay
I would go Brandon Pajemski. Oh, Clay. That's a good call. I was going to say Pajemski has a chance being a Gen Z guy.
I could see Clay actually hating it too. I think Clay. I could see Clay loving coffee. I could see Clay hating coffee. I don't know why, but I pictured Clay. You saw the Jimmy, like about like Jimmy Butler and his like coffee. Like I think he like has like a coffee brand or maybe even a coffee house like in Miami or somewhere. But he loves coffee. So I could almost see Clay being like the Jimmy Butler level of like liking different coffees. But then I could also see him actually hating it completely.
I feel like if he loved it,
I could see Chris Paul.
Okay. Yeah.
I could see Chris Paul as a coffee guy. I don't know why. Maybe because he's a little older. Although coffee, as you said, like coffee is very much a trend. I mean, it's been a trendy thing forever. I mean, it's like it goes beyond my generation. Like coffee became a thing, like really became a thing, like in the early 90s again, of like kind of trendy. So I know it kind of feels that way now, but it was a big deal like 30 years ago when I was a kid.
I do feel like if Clay was obsessed with coffee, we would have seen it in one of his boat videos by now. Like if he's in his happy place, he'd have a nice cup with him.
No doubt. Yeah. Maybe like an actual mug. Like he'd just have like an actual mug like on the boat. Like an actual ceramic glass mug.
With Rocco on it, like just get all of Clay's joys bundled up into one.
Yeah, no question. Let's dig into a few more things. Erwin Kwong checking in. Kuminga's still learning the low post angles. Right now he's using size to beat post defenders. With more experience, he'll be able to beat the bigger defenders. I think that's fair. The one thing I'll say about Kuminga, he still gets fouled a lot, which is good. Like, and yeah, you got to make the free throws, but I thought that really saved his game on Thursday against Chicago. Like he was on track to he was on track to have a D or an F game, basically a D or an F game, but I think he made it like a C by getting to the free throw line. Like I think he bumped it up that significantly. He didn't have a great defensive game, and whatever. I mean, DeRozan kind of took him to school a little bit, but what happens in school, you learn, hopefully. And so I think, that happens. And I think that's part of the young growth process. But I think the one thing that he does do, even if some bigger players or even players of his size are able to kind of stone him in there a little bit, he does get fouled, which I think makes up for it. And as long as he's getting fouled, I do think you can keep going for it. And then Erwin also added that Kuminga is just starting to be aware of the double team. Yeah, he hasn't handled the double team great at times, but again, that's part of the evaluation and the development and all of that. And Kuminga is a pretty good passer, I think, when he sees it. And I think he's willing to pass when he sees it. He doesn't always see it. And so it's kind of like a quarterback, right? You got to see it. And if you don't see it and you're winging it, then you're going to either be inaccurate or lead to some bad turnovers. But all in all, I think Kuminga has been terrific. And again, couple little blips here or there. But
I'd push back on this one from No Cap, saying he's only good against bad defenses. I think earlier in the season that was the case, where you play him against a Portland and like opponents where it's like young, athletic, don't really know how the NBA fully works, and now you get through a whole stretch of an 82-game season. I think he's really proven that he can rise up against good defenses. I think Phoenix, he was great. I think the Knicks, they were undermanned a little bit, still a good defense. I think he's proven that he can hang with the best of them, just maybe not consistently, but he can do it.
Yeah, I think, I would agree with you on that. I would push back on that as well. It has not been only bad defenses, although he has, but he has owned bad defenses. Like, again, I'm not saying it as a slight to the rest of it, because I think he's been productive against good teams and good defenses as well. But he really has owned bad defenses. And I think that, especially with Wemby out, I think he has an opportunity to really feast. It's going to be interesting. And this is, as much as San Antonio stinks, there's still Popovich. And I think, without Curry, I'm really interested to see how Popovich defends the Warriors in this game tonight, and how he defends, kind of knowing, all right, is Kuminga going to be the number one option? Are they going to trade Chris Paul? That whole thing. Are they going to start Chris Paul? Did I say, are they going to trade Chris Paul? I think I might have said, are they going to trade Chris Paul? If I did, I was looking at a comment. There were a couple people going back and forth on Kuminga. And the potential to trade him. I'm not going to get into any of that as far as the Kuminga trade stuff. That's an off-season conversation. I know I'd kind of thrown it out there at one point the other night. Like, hey, the Warriors, and we talked about it last night in our off-air chat, basically, the Warriors and No Cap was kind of going back and forth with Irwin on this. And No Cap says his opinion, I would not pay JK $120 million. Look how bad that the Jalen McDaniels contract looks. And he got, or Jaden McDaniels, right? Or is it Jalen or Jaden?
It's Jaden.
Jaden, yeah,
No.
Jaden, yeah, okay. Jaden McDaniels. He got what, 130 or something like that? Didn't he get 130?
He got a lot of money.
He got a lot of money. He's a really good player, but again, some players it looks different when they're making a lot of money, and he's a specific role player, good defender, can score a little bit. Like the bottom line, to bring it back to I guess I'm going to get into what I said I wasn't going to get into, but I'm going to pose it as a question without really an opinion attached to it, because I don't really have an opinion on it at this point. I think we need to see the way the season plays out, but the Warriors are going to No Cap's point, they are going to, in this offseason, have to make the determination based on how it finishes. And the fact that Kuminga now has, like I said in January, like he's probably not a $100 million player in January. And I don't think he was. He is now. Like, I think that, like, he clearly is now. I know Bobby Marks of ESPN around the All-Star break had been quoted as saying that he thought Kuminga was going to get, 4 and 120, somewhere in that range in terms of an extension. And, the Warriors are going to have to determine this offseason if they're comfortable with Kuminga being a $120 million player, not next year, because he's locked in around 7, but the following year. It's basically the Jordan Poole conversation all over again. And Poole did more in his time with the Warriors than Kuminga has done to this point, helping him win the championship and all of that. And was, more productive in his own way up until the point in which he earned the contract. But the reality is the numbers are the numbers. And Kuminga is, I think that 120 number is about right, actually, for what Kuminga, I could see Kuminga wanting more than that, to be honest. I think that's a low key thing that the Warriors may have to deal with is the whole, him and his camp's opinion of who he is. Like, that's something that popped up obviously last year and earlier this year. But the question the Warriors are going to have to ask themselves, Greg, is would you pay him 120? And do you believe in his trajectory as, being a number 2 potential option moving forward, or even a number 1 beyond the Steph time? And, if you do, how do you weigh that versus the fact that he now has played himself into the conversation where you could trade him for a superstar, maybe a veteran superstar? And it's an off-season conversation. I don't really have an answer. Like right now, I think let's roll it out with Kuminga and see how this continues to work, because there's some legitimate optimism about the way that he's played these last 2 months. So I'm more of kind of pump the brakes. But that's the question that the Warriors are going to have to ask themselves. Do we want to pay Kuminga 120 or $140 million and, versus potentially going and getting somebody that already, betting on his star, as opposed to getting somebody that's already a star and trying to pair that person with Steph and Draymond and maybe Clay and that group, if you think you can win another title in the next 2 years?
Yes, the prospect of trading Jonathan Kuminga is very much not off the table. And that's not to say that I think they should do it, and it's not to say that they will do it. But it is to say that just because he has started playing much better basketball for them, well, that also really increases his value, right? Like, he didn't have the greatest sense of value come December when it was an option of, do they just package him and maybe Chris Paul for Pascal Siakam? Turns out he started playing much better. They said he was about as untouchable as you could be in trade discussions at the deadline. And the question isn't, well, are the Warriors thinking about their future? Obviously, if you're most concerned with your future, you're going to keep him. But there is a chance that they would just gather around. Maybe they extend Clay 2 more years. You got Steve Kerr, you got Steph Curry, you got Draymond Green. And Joe Lacob and Mike Dunleavy and everyone might just collectively agree and say, F it, and trade Kuminga, knowing that you're probably going to bottom out when this thing is done, because most dynasties don't really end in an elegant fashion if we're just going to look at the history of sports. And maybe they try to get someone that can help them try to make a serious run at a 5th title now. Again, not saying that's what they should do, and I'm not saying that's what they will do, but the point being, as JD is shining a light on this, it is a conversation that's going to be going around in the offseason.
Yeah, and look, maybe Kuminga continues his ascent, and it's like, and look, we know the Warriors, we know Joe Lacob loves Kuminga. We know that there are many people, I know for a fact there are many, not just Joe Lacob, there are more than one person in the Warriors organization. I mean, Draymond said it. I mean, like, he thinks he's a future star. Like, there are multiple people that believe Kuminga's a future star, and that was always Kuminga's ceiling. Kuminga's ceiling was even last year when he was, when he played his way out of the playoffs against Sacramento, his ceiling was still a star, an all-star, and maybe better than an all-star, maybe a superstar down the line. So I don't think it's crazy to think that and so the debate is going to be, are you going to bet on that and versus who potentially would be out there that might help you more in the short term? And maybe the answer is no, forget it. I know, No Cap added, No Cap was talking about the CP3 salary slot and, needing to use that to bring back a player. And he referenced Joe Lacob on the Tim Kawakami podcast where, basically Lacob was like, yeah, not only do they want to get under the second apron, but they basically want to get under the tax. And I thought, wow, that's interesting. And next year would probably be the year to do it, because Kuminga, it would still be making 7.3 or whatever it is next year. That would be interesting. So I think, if they keep Clay, they may have to move Wiggins. If they could we see a year next year where the Warriors just say it's going to be Steph, let's just say Clay, but it's going to be Steph, Clay, Moody. Like, maybe they try to trade Wiggins, although again, good luck without taking somebody back. Steph, Clay, Moody, Kuminga, Draymond, and Trace Jackson Davis off the bench, and Podziemski, and or Podziemski starts and Clay comes off the bench, however they want to do that. That team's not winning a championship next year. That team's not winning a championship. So, and then it's like, well, what are you really trying to do these final couple of Steph years? So I think they sort of find themselves in that boat. But the truth is, if Lacob wants to do that, then it does change. Like, they could put together, I think, a good team next year, but I don't think they could put together a great team next year if they just go with the young players and the older players combined. Like, I don't, and honestly, I don't even think they could be a championship team next year if Kuminga turned into a super, like an all-star next year. Like, I shouldn't say he won't be a superstar next year, but if he let's just say high-end Kuminga becomes an all-star next year, but your core is Steph, Podziemski, Moody, Kuminga, Draymond, TJD is the backup center, Podziemski or Clay coming off the bench. Obviously, you fill in around that. Maybe GP2 is still around. You fill in around that.
I think it's a similar deal to what this year is, which is you could compete with the best of them, but your margin for error is so slim the whole time.
I think he'd be worse. I think you'd be worse, to be honest. And yeah, I really do. I think that team would be worse. And even if Kuminga's an all-star, I think that team would be, or that team would be less apt to be able to win a championship. And look, maybe we're talking like this team can't, that team can't. It's semantics, because like it's proven that neither team could. But I hear where you're coming from. I don't know. I think that team is. And maybe they're going to do that. But hearing Tim say that, or hearing Joe say that to Tim, really made me wonder, like, oh, maybe they just aren't going to worry about winning a championship next year because they feel that the benefit of getting the financial, getting under the and again, he didn't say for sure they were going to do that. I just, and they're always looking to do big things. So I think if they could get, what instance would lead them to not doing that? Maybe adding another superstar. Well, then how are you going to add that superstar? And there are other ways it doesn't have. Now, Kuminga is the talent piece that would get you that superstar, but then you'd also, but CP3's contract, Wiggins, like there's a lot of different things in play with that. But no, I'm not saying the Warriors should trade Jonathan Kuminga. I'm going to put that on the record because I don't want people acting like that's what I'm saying, because I'm not advocating for that at all. I've said, even while being critical of Kuminga, that the Warriors have to be really careful that they don't trade away a future star, because that still is his ceiling, as much as, maybe I've disagreed with some as far as, how close he is to being that next level of player. The bottom line is he's helping them win now, and he's furthering his ceiling. And that's been a step up over the last 2 months from where it was in previous iterations in which he had played. I loved the all of the different guesses as far as Kevon Looney's jersey number. I was just kind of cycling through those in the chat. I know we did have the correct answer at 36. And so, yeah, a lot of really good comments. Douglas Mike says, feed Kuminga and TJD tonight. FL Dubs fan, at least 3 or 4 of the Warriors are going to have to raise their scoring output without Steph. The trick is, how does that happen in a way where they're not forcing bad shots as well? Totally. I mean, that's the name of the game, and that's where San Antonio playing them at least gives you a little bit of a margin for error. But they can beat you. They can absolutely beat you. I mean, they beat the Warriors. Did they beat the Warriors last year? Was it 2 years ago? Anyway, I don't know. I think 2 years ago they beat the Warriors, but that was a little better Spurs team.
Yeah, for sure. Not quite the same, but yeah. I mean, again, the no excuses thing stays for tonight and Monday. Wemby might play Monday, but tonight, no Wemby at home. I know you don't have Steph. Dude, it's the Spurs without their only truly good player. No, I mean, no offense. I don't dislike Devin Vassell or Keldon Johnson or some of these other guys, but it's like, is a 13-50 team with the number 1 pick in the draft, generational talent, not playing. So if you want to be a team that can take yourself seriously and get into the playoffs, you got to win this game.
Yeah, you got to win this game. And I think you got to win. You got to win Monday. Like, you got to, Sacramento just beat San Antonio a couple of, like, everybody's beat. Like, you need to take advantage. Like, when you look up a week and a half or a month and a half ago, and everybody was like, oh, the Warriors have the easiest schedule. Well, why do the Warriors have the easiest schedule? The Warriors have the easiest schedule because they got San Antonio 3 more times. Like, that's part of the reason why the Warriors have the easiest schedule. And so you got to be able to take advantage of that down the stretch here. So, we'll see. And I think, we got about 5 minutes or so to go here on our Just Dubs live stream show here on a Saturday for KNBR, the sports leader. Appreciate everybody in the comments. I do want to get to a couple of more comments here as
By the
well.
way, this has been an awesome show. No breaks. Like, this has been fantastic. Thanks to all of you guys.
Yeah, sometimes you need to take a little break to use the restroom or grab another beverage. I came fully stocked. I'm going, double caffeine. I like the this is not an ad, but I do like the Good and Gather caffeinated cherry cola sparkling. I'm a big sparkling water guy as well. And it's a little bump, little caffeine bump.
And I'm going to endorse Hydro Flask to hold your water.
Yeah, those are good. Yeah, no, absolutely. CA, I think that we have a log jam and too many similar players. If Wiggins isn't 2022 level and they're scared to play GP2 because injury, and Moody isn't where Kerr wants him to be, then something's got to give. I mean, that's in a nutshell been the Warriors' biggest problem when things, that was the November, December, January problem. It was that Wiggins wasn't good and GP wasn't around for a good chunk of that because injury, and Moody wasn't playing, and what's Kuminga, and I mean that's been the problem. I do think they've cleared some of that. Like Wiggins is the 3, Kuminga is the 4, GP2 is a backup that they're going to play 15 to 20 tops, and Moody's in the mix now. So although, and I'm not blaming Moody, but I do think in the Chicago game specifically, it seemed like Kerr trying to do his thing with Wiggins while trying to get Moody in there, while trying to figure out how to get Trace Jackson Davis in instead of Looney. Like, I do think that left the rotation a little bit different than it had been. And I think it led to just a little bit, whether it was more defensive miscues, whether it was it just felt like one of those early season games where it was like Steve was trying to get everybody their time rather than just playing the groups that got into the best flow. That being said, I think you got to suck it up. You got to suck it up, and you got to be able to figure out ways to win while you're trying to figure out the ability to find the right combinations.
Yep, you sure do. And it's going to be interesting to see how. I'm really curious about how this whole first quarter and a half of rotations goes tonight. And again, might not be what we see on Monday or on Wednesday against Dallas, or if you got to do no Steph against the Lakers. Probably going to look different then too, but there's not a ton for me to be really curious about tonight, just when you consider the 2 stars for each team not playing. But how the Warriors handle this rotation in the first quarter and a half, that's going to be something I'm really going to key into.
Yeah, it is going to be fascinating, and that's something that we're always locked into. I think how the Warriors distribute the minutes and everything is always super important. Anton chimed in here about 25 minutes ago. Is it possible that Curry is out for only 2 games? This is the best case scenario where Kerr will get some more clarity for final tweaks as far as the playoff rotations go. Yeah, that's the perfect world if it's only the 2 San Antonio games. And then he's back for the Dallas and the Laker games. We'll see. We will get more clarity. We will get more clarity on the Steph injury. He's not going to play tonight. I think he's not going to play Monday. I think we can probably book that. If I had to guess,
I'd say not Wednesday.
Yeah, I would say not Wednesday, and I would even say not the Laker game. Although that's a pretty important game. I think you can I think the Laker game is more important even than the Dallas game, because at a minimum, you want to continue to put the Lakers down into that 10th spot, and just, final couple of, things I wanted to get to here, just in kind of looking at the standings. I do think, and we're going to do this on Dubs OT every night as well, just sort of looking at the standings and the big games for that night. You look at it right now, OKC's back in first. In the West, Minnesota 2. Denver is coming on strong. Denver beat Boston the other night. They're only a game out of the 1, and Denver has said they're doing the 1. Did you see the story from Chris Haynes this week, Greg, about how the Nuggets had to have their White House visit rescheduled? So they were supposed to go to the White House in January. It was rescheduled by the White House and the Biden administration to be March 18th, I think it was. So a week from Monday. And basically the Nuggets were not close. And I'm going to look up exactly where they were. I have it right here. Quick couple of clicks. The Nuggets are in Dallas on the 17th, which is next Sunday. They were supposed to go to the White House Monday, the 18th. So they were going to go from Denver to Dallas to DC, and then on an off day in between games in Dallas and Minnesota. So so they were going to go Denver to Dallas to DC to Minnesota, and the in between days they were going to be at the White House and be honored for their championship last year. And so they said, no, we're not going to do that because that's a lot of travel, and they want that Minnesota game because they want to catch Minnesota and OKC and end up with the 1 seed. So no White House visit for the Nuggets. And I think they're probably thinking in the back of their mind, well, we'll come next year. we'll come next year after we win it again, which is not out of the realm of possibility. So that's where Denver is at. As far as the 3, but Denver's coming for the 1. The Clippers are kind of locked into 4 right now. The Pelicans are playing better to gain a little bit of separation. Went 5, but it's still pretty. I mean, only a game separating them and the Suns. The Kings are only a half game out of 6, but the Kings are 7. Dallas is 8. The Lakers have moved in front of the Warriors with their win against the Bucks last night, and the Warriors, for as well as they've played, are still 10th in the Western Conference. And you want to at least get to 9. Huge games against Dallas and the Lakers coming up. The Warriors are still 3.5 now back. That's where the game against Chicago really hurts you. 3.5 back of Phoenix. They're 3 back of the Kings. And as we've talked about a lot, Greg, they're probably not going to have the tiebreakers over. Well, they're not against Phoenix. They probably will not against Sacramento. Unless they can beat the Lakers a couple of times and the Kings start losing to Phoenix and the Lakers, which they just don't do. And the Clippers, like the Kings don't lose to the Lakers, and they've won at the Clippers, and they've won in Phoenix and beat the Suns 2 out of 4, I believe now. So getting to 7 is looking more and more difficult. I think 8 right now is absolutely attainable. And then just quickly, as far as some of the games tonight, and we'll get some final thoughts from you, Greg, as far as things go. Just looking at some of the games tonight in the NBA, the Warriors obviously playing San Antonio. That's a huge one. And then Dallas is at Detroit. The Clippers are hosting Chicago. Boston at Phoenix. That's a game I know we're going to have on our airwaves here on KNBR tonight over on the radio side, and then we're going to be on right at the conclusion of that game, which will coincide with the conclusion of the Warriors game. So Phoenix playing Boston, that could be a potential opportunity to gain ground. We'll see if Dallas messes around and loses at Detroit. Probably not, but you never know. And then Utah and Denver are playing in Denver. Again, Denver's coming for the 1 seed. So, Greg, excellent show today. Final thoughts. I like the new camera angles. The chat has been awesome today. The views have been awesome today on all of the platforms. And we're going to take a little break and do it again here with Dubs OT tonight.
Oh, yeah. Get to go and devote a little bit of my day to some of the Giants and Bill Lasky. Then the Dubs play. Then we're going to be right back here. It's like the long haul Saturdays that I also live for. Just a great show. Awesome stuff. And, just another reminder that if we don't start Dubs OT right away, it's going to be because we are doing Boston and Phoenix. That's going to be on our airwaves. And then once that game ends, we're not doing a post-game show for that or anything. But once that's over, then we're free to switch over. So depending on the timing, might be a little delay. We are on tonight. We'll be tweeting out the links and everything. And I think that's really all I had. Timberwolves at Lakers tomorrow. That's a big one.
Yeah, that's going to be a big one tomorrow as well, and we'll kind of reset the schedule for tomorrow. The Kings are playing Houston tomorrow in Sacramento, a game that you could say they should win, but you never know with the Kings, especially at home, as we've talked about. So, appreciate everybody in the YouTube chat. We'll be back tonight. Douglas Mike, see you later after the game. Appreciate it. Erwin, thanks, JD and Greg. Erwin also said he's only coming out to Harmonic if we're both out there together, which that may happen in the playoffs. I know we're working on some things. I don't want to tease too much ahead of time, but that might be an option in the playoffs. So stand by for that. But the Warriors, you got to get to the playoffs.
I was going to say, got to make it.
Yeah, exactly. And so, the Giants are playing the A's. That's over on KNBR on the radio side as well. Appreciate it. We'll talk to you tonight. For Greg, I'm JD, KNBR, the sports leader.